Welcome to Xhibition, an Xbox podcast, and this is a weekly show dedicated entirely to the world of Xbox, bringing you everything you need to know to keep yourself in the loop. And this week, I am joined by Kevin Ainsworth of Project Xtalk. I had the pleasure of visiting him and his crew over on the show last week, had a fantastic time. And now we have him over on Xhibition, digging into some news topics of the week and also looking into the future. So, Kevin, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat some games with me. But let the fine people know a little bit about you and the show that you've got.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the invite. I loved having you on last week, and I'm always excited to come on other podcasts, Xbox or any other show, really. So, I'm a fan of yours. I obviously listen to your show every week, and I'm just excited to be here. But if you're looking for more from me, Project X Talk is our weekly podcast available on all audio platforms. We have a YouTube channel, which is currently at Project X Talk over there on YouTube. You can find us at Twitter, the same handle over there. You might get some changes if you're listening to this in the near future. We got some things coming. A little foreshadowing there. But
Wow.
go over to our Twitter. You will see any announcements that we have over there. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here. We talk games every week, the latest Xbox news, what we're playing, and yeah, it's just a fun time over there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think everybody should go check you out. Very excited to see what you guys are going to be cranking out. Sounds like we've got some exciting changes in the pike. But like you said, there's been a ton of news to dig into. We've had the Summer Game Fest news over the past couple of weeks and just so much exciting conversation, not only in the world of Xbox, but across the gaming industry, but in Xbox in particular. I mean, you've got some big games that were announced at the showcases. You've got an exciting summer demo event going on right now on the Xbox store that you can dig into for free and check out some of the games. So I thought that we would go ahead and start off with some conversation around Summer Game Fest because, according to a new report, some official numbers have been released, and there is a peak viewer count of 3.5 million global viewers on June the 9th, and there were 27 million streams of Summer Game Fest. I'm looking on thegamer.com right now. Looking back on Summer Game Fest 2022, how do these numbers make you feel? What were some of your standout announcements? Just give me your general feel on Summer Game Fest and how it looks going forward, looking towards 2023 too.
Yeah, for sure. So Summer Game Fest for me wasn't the best showcase that I saw over the last couple weeks. It was actually probably near the bottom for me. I thought it was a little too long for what Jeff actually had. I think that he needs to separate out the developer interviews and the actual gameplay, like kind of like we see Xbox doing, because there is a market where people want to hear more about certain games, dive into those developer interviews. I don't think the main showcase is where you need to illustrate that. But for me, I'm not surprised about these numbers because I think Jeff obviously he has a big name. He is probably the biggest like showman in the games industry. And you see the game awards always pulls big numbers. So anything he does is gonna get some recognition. It's gonna pull in the fans and the numbers. So that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, you see like the jokes from GameSpot about Key 3, and you also have the conversation around E3 itself saying that they're going to come back and they're prepping for this big return in 2023. Well, that's what we heard about 2022. So I think the jury is still kind of out on that one. But yeah, Keeley pulls in numbers. And when it comes
Mhm.
to showmanship, and when it comes to presenting things, was there a lack of content this year? Arguably, yes. I think that as everybody's kind of discussed, the past 2 years have finally caught up to people. And while we've been able to keep chunking out games, now a lot of developers and a lot of publishers are saying, okay, here is the point in our production cycle where COVID really took a toll. And so, to your point, I think that this was probably a weaker show than I think a lot of people had imagined. I know that Keeley also put out a tweet a couple of days beforehand saying, temper your expectations,
Mhm.
which I think kind of set the tone as well. But the viewership keeps going up. And I think part of that has to do with just how many people are getting into gaming. I mean, it's becoming a bigger and bigger pastime for a lot of people and a lot of families too, when you really think about it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. We were talking offline before the show started, and I mentioned I was at GameStop today, and there were like parents who were waiting outside for PlayStation 5s because their child wanted one. And these kids were, I literally heard the mom say, I have no idea what this world is all about. I don't understand like the gaming, but he does. And like, I want to support that. And I was like, that's a very like, I great, like, you're being a good parent, but it's good you have that introspection, and it's just like you just see more and more gamers coming up, and whether that's mobile gaming, console gaming, PC gaming, everybody is kind of narrowing and going towards these showcases to see, what am I going to be able to play in the near future on my platform of choice, or if you have all the platforms, great, but I don't think there was like a lack of games, particularly at the Summer Games Fest. I think they had a lot of games. I don't think there were a lot of new announcements. And I think that is particularly what people kind of found disappointing, because a lot of what was shown were things that we knew was coming. Even the big, like The Last of Us remake, we knew for a long time that that was rumored to be coming. So when it hit, and it got leaked earlier in the day, but it just wasn't that exciting to watch. And then he did this weird thing where he kind of kept a theme for the games. There were a lot of space horror games, right? Like Dead Space, Callisto Protocol. You have the Signalis, or not Signalis. I can't even remember the other one. The one with Troy Baker in it. But like, there were
Yeah.
so many of those weird. They look good, but like the fact, I think people got a little sick of it. That would be like, oh, this looks just like the game we saw 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I would agree, and I mean, you even see Keeley joking about it, where he's like, "Wow, a lot of space right now." Like, I mean, it was a theme throughout the show, and the unfortunate thing is that while I'm sure that each of these games brings their own unique element to the table, the reality is that the majority of audience members that are going to glance at these trailers on YouTube are going to say, "Wow, that looks like Dead Space. That also looks like Dead Space. Wow, look at that, some more Dead Space." Um, and then there was also the new Aliens game that came out that looks just like the Aliens game that came out a couple of months ago. Like, there's just a whole bunch of random space theme for Summer Game Fest overall. But you brought up a good point about the ever expanding amount of players in the world. Like, there are so many people that are playing games, and one of the big elements that was brought up just before Xbox's showcase, the week before actually, was the expansion of their cloud gaming services, where cloud gaming has become such a big part of Xbox's future right now. There's a lot of conversation around cloud gaming and the impact that it could potentially have. And we also see a partnership with Samsung coming out swinging, where you have the 2022 Samsung TVs with Xbox Cloud Gaming baked in. You have the rumors recently, and this is kind of where the news comes in this week, of Xbox Cloud Gaming no longer requiring a controller, where it can just be used with mouse and keyboard if you're playing on something like a web browser or another medium that supports a keyboard and mouse. And so, with cloud gaming becoming a bigger part of Xbox's future, do you think that it's going to become something that people can look at and say, this is the main way that I play games? Or even has it already become that?
So I think if you're currently in, if you've been like a player that's had consoles, I don't think you're going to look at cloud and be like, this is the way I want to play my games going forward, because cloud is always, it's always going to be inferior to the native versions on consoles and or PC. It just is like, you can't get the same resolution. It depends on your internet connection. Latency is there. So it's always not going to be the ideal way, but I think what Xbox is banking on is this being a way to get players involved that currently can't afford a console. Maybe they are those children, and I've talked about this before, that parents don't want to ship out $500 for a console, but they see, hey, we have a Samsung TV now, but $15 a month, I can, and my kid's going to have endless hours of entertainment on this Game Pass, or even Fortnite, which is free, which is probably a main draw for a lot of the younger audience. So they sign up for that, then they can just play it through the cloud. The kid's happy, the parents don't have to drop a bunch of money. It's just a way, I think, to expand the audience and open up areas that were previously locked off to gamers. And in another aspect, it's also depends on what market you're looking at. I've spoken a lot about Japan, and Japan is moving away from consoles. We see that more and more, where they like the Switch because it's mobile. They can take it on the go. They love not sitting at home playing games. They love being out, and the fact that everyone over there smartphone usage is through the roof, and then they can just pull up the Xbox app. I think that is a big driving factor where Xbox wants to get into that Japanese market and they want to push cloud.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you bring up. And I think that it really depends on the infrastructure too. You know, does somebody have a data connection that can support this? Or if you're preferably, obviously, cloud gaming works best on Wi Fi, do you have speeds that can support high speed gaming while other people might be streaming Netflix or somebody might be on a work from home call? Um, but I think that your point about the subscription model lowering the barrier of entry for people is a really good one. And it's one that has been in conversation a lot recently. And I think that with the topic of a family plan that is all but confirmed coming to Game Pass, I think that brings a lot of value. I mean, in my household, my girlfriend plays on my Xbox Game Pass subscription, I play on it. And so it kind of blends together our interest to where the algorithm's muddled for recommendations. The cloud saves she might have a save on a game that I want to play, and then I've already got something on there. So it kind of gets messy, and that solves that problem. But even beyond that, I think that there could be and should be a cloud gaming based tier of this subscription where you only have access to cloud. And I don't think it'll be $4.99 a month, but I feel like a good $8.99 per month price
Hmm.
would be a really good entry level cost for people to get in and say, hey, you can't play these games on console, you can't get the PC benefits, and maybe even you take the perks away. But if you just want the cloud games themselves, I think that's a good way to do that. Um, and then as it expands globally and more countries gain access to this technology, hopefully they will continue to improve the infrastructure, which is another thing that during an event earlier this week for developers, they said that they are getting ready to announce even lower latency that can improve that user experience even more.
Hmm. I think you're dead on with the fact that a cloud only tier would be fantastic. I really think that that is a step Xbox needs to look into. Personally, I would go with the $5 a month route just for clouds. And then when we know the option to play not only Game Pass games, but every game you own is coming, then you bump it up to $8.99. So if it's just Game Pass games, maybe keep it at that $5 tier. But then if it's allowing you to purchase a la carte games and stream those, maybe bump it up because you are offering more value there. I think that would be phenomenal. My only fear is that then you kind of get into the criticism of like we saw with PlayStation Plus, right? The three tiers. People didn't really want that, even though Xbox kind of has three tiers already. Like we have Gold, Game Pass, and Game Pass Ultimate. But like when everyone says Game Pass, we usually mean Game Pass Ultimate. Like how many people are actually subscribed to the $10 a month the Game Pass tier? Like not many, because you have the $5 more a month. Oh, I get way more value for my money there. So I'm worried about muddling the subscription. Maybe gold goes away as long as been rumored and wanted. Then you introduce the cloud tier. I could see working.
Yeah, I would agree, and it's long past time for Xbox Live Gold to bite the dust. I mean, this is an archaic offering in their lineup that drags down the Xbox brand as a whole. Because when you look at it, you have this eh, service that gives you basic access to online connectivity, which is something that should no longer really be a factor of cost for a big corporation like Microsoft or Sony. The online functionality should be free in the same way that it is on Steam, but at the same time, if you look at the benefits, you get two games per month that are Xbox One, and then you get two games per month that are Xbox or Xbox 360. And normally these games are from the bottom of the barrel, just a pointless, irrelevant addition to your library 9 times out of 10. Or they could even be repeats that you already have. So if you eliminate Xbox Live Gold, bake that into every tier of the subscription service or just the ones that require console connectivity, then you could free up some space to where you do have the base, like you said, of $5 per month of the cloud. Then you have the $10 per month console. Then you have the ultimate that gives you everything that you need. And then the family plan. I think that's a pretty clean way to do it. But these are choices that Microsoft is going to have to make because you've really got to go all in. And I love the point that you made about being able to play your entire library through the cloud. I think that's a really powerful opportunity because then you talk about the need for a console today and the big draw. Let's say cloud gaming is perfect for somebody. There are no issues, no latency. They have a wonderful experience. the draw of having a console right now is that you can play all of your games on it. There is no limitation. The Game Pass library is not your only choice or your only
Mhm.
selection. You can play whatever you want. If that goes away, then you legitimately do offer this three-tiered system of console, PC, or cloud. That is when you actually achieve that. Right now, that offering exists, but it's like going to an unlimited buffet and you only get to choose from one table out of five. Like you don't have the full smorgasbord of options that are actually out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the way you just laid it out makes a lot of sense to me, especially like Cloud $5, Game Pass $10, Game Pass all, because then you kind of build like the pricing makes sense at that structure because you're like, oh, $15 includes the previous two. It makes way more sense, which we kind of have now, but then you just like cloud gaming comes out of nowhere. And I think cloud gaming, we need better infrastructure in the US before it really takes off. There are so many states where it's just not viable. The ISPs have data caps that are very low or incredibly low speeds that people can't really they have no option. Their only option is physical disc still, and then even then they have to download the game. So it's becoming more and more of a hassle for a lot of people in certain areas to actually have a console, and cloud is just not available for them. Like that's not something they'd go through their data cap and streaming and it's so quickly.
Yeah, the data cap point that you make is a really good one because so many people do have to deal with that. I'm not one of those people. I have unlimited data
Same.
on my network, but the amount of I mean, as a fellow content creator too, and the majority of people that listen to podcasts, I would say, are probably in some way creating something. Like that's just kind of there's a shared group there. And so these people are uploading and downloading constantly. You're going through that data cap. I mean, in lightning speed. But I have another question for you. We're talking about 5, 10, $15 as a hypothetical baseline for Game Pass prices. At what point, now that we have the Riot Games partnership coming in as well and making that PC offering even stronger, do you think that Xbox is going to look at this and say, we have to go up on this price because now you have day one releases from us, third party partnerships, EA Play is baked in, and you have Riot Games offering basically an unlimited access to their entire library of content?
hmm So I kind of wonder because I've heard people bring up the price increase before, and I kind of wonder if they're holding off until they hit a certain milestone, maybe 50 million subs or maybe higher, or maybe in my opinion, they shouldn't increase it at all because if you can continue to provide this like Microsoft can, like they can front the bill. There's no issue there. They could continue their loss leading strategy, but I think we've seen a reduction in the amount of day one and third party games this year. And maybe that is how they're going to mitigate some of that. Like first party stays, we get a bunch of indie titles, bring third party, maybe after release, because we have not had the third party drops like last year that we had this year, right? And we have some towards the end of the year coming, like a Plague Tale is a big one that's dropping in October. But it's interesting to see how the difference between 2021 and 2022 for Game Pass has panned out because I think 2021 might have set people's expectations maybe a little too high for how often third party day one drops are going to happen because I often see the narrative like, oh, I'll play it if it's a Game Pass. Is Elden Ring coming to Game Pass day one was a big one I remember. And it's like you can't expect every big third party to come, and I don't think we should set that precedent. It's great when it happens, but if you can give me every first party game, which the goal is a first party title every few months or every quarter, I think it was what they said. So multiple ones a year, and then a bunch of good indie games, some double A's. I think that's a good system to have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that you and I probably share the same mindset on it of that for me, Game Pass, as somebody who doesn't mind exploring a library of different types of games, it's a good variety and it's a good discovery engine for me to dive in and say, oh, I would never play, for example, Persona 5. I would never pick that up and pay $50 or $60 for that because that's not normally in my wheelhouse. But am I going to try it and see what all the fuss is about whenever it does come to Game Pass? Absolutely. But for everybody else that's like, oh, like you said, is Elden Ring coming to Game Pass on day one? Is Modern Warfare 2 coming to Game Pass on day one? Battlefield, Madden,
Mhm.
all of these big games. If the answer is no, traditionally, then other people might not see the value in comparison to what it could be. And Microsoft certainly does have the cash to splash to make that happen. But I think there's value in saving that money and really investing it in the games that matter, and in building these third party partnerships up and in putting it in your first party rather than just paying to have all of these day one releases. And then you might even have a situation similar to Mixer where you throw all of this money into a service and then it doesn't pan out and you're out of, your piggy bank's empty. So you just got to smash it. There's nothing else to do with it.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, Game Pass is continuing to certainly provide some value there. And what did you think about how many day one games were announced during the Xbox showcase? Do you think that's a good lineup coming in the next 12 months?
Yeah, when I was watching the showcase with everyone, and maybe it was a sort of like a group kind of ganging up on it, because it wasn't that like every announcement was hitting, because there was a big lull for me during the showcase. But I think looking back and after, thinking on it and seeing other people's reactions to it, I'm like, okay, this was a good showcase. I really actually, I think when I went through the list, I had a good amount of games. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize like how many of these I'm actually excited for and going to play day one. So I think they did a great job getting this showcase was a perfect example, actually. Double A and indie games that look good and are coming day one to Game Pass. Like there were the big triple A games they showed off, like Diablo and Modern Warfare, aren't day one as of right now because the deal isn't closed, but they'll definitely be in Game Pass when the deal does close. So even then, it's like maybe you don't get a day one, but the amount of value in that showcase for me what is phenomenal. Like the amount of it's just crazy to think about.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of my questions when it comes to price increases is once Activision Blizzard closes and hypothetically you have people that are your Call of Duty kids, call them what they are, that only buy this game, they only play it throughout the year. Let's say Game Pass bakes in all of the Call of Duty games that have been released to date and you get Modern Warfare 2, and then on top of that you get some cosmetic perks or some double XP tokens or something in Warzone. That immediately makes that valuable for them. Is that when the price increases, or does the increase in subscribers from that offering offset the cost of the Activision Blizzard acquisition, which their initial offering, as of right now, has actually now stayed the same while the price of Activision Blizzard or the value based on stock is decreased? So it's kind of like, I don't know how they're going to handle that. And I think that there is potential for them to increase the price, but I'm with you where I don't think they should just because they can cover that cost. And Phil Spencer has said this is a system that works for them. This is not a problem. They aren't taking a hit that is not insurmountable. They're good.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So we talked earlier about cloud gaming. We talked earlier about the Japanese market. And with that Japanese market, we got news just a couple of hours ago that the Xbox Series X and S has outsold the PlayStation 5 in Japan for the second time this generation. Now, the first initial point that everybody likes to make is that the production constraints are what are actually causing this. And there is validity in that without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Because you have the most powerful systems being the Xbox Series X and S, and it is the S that is propelling this sales phenomenon that we're seeing. But when you see Xbox overtaking PlayStation in any capacity, what's your first reaction, specifically in regards to that part of the world? But also, I mean, we've had some really good sales months here in the States as well.
Yeah, so I don't get too excited about talking about sales numbers, but I do think that this is a clear indication that because PlayStation 5 might not be available, Series S and the push Xbox is making is appealing to players in Japan. And we see that these sales figures, right? We just had the Xbox showcase. What did they announce at the Xbox showcase? Persona coming to Xbox and Game Pass. Hideo Kojima's making a game. That Wulong Fallen Dynasty from Team Ninja. So those are three big Japanese focused things coming, and then you see Xbox Series S selling. So even if Japanese players don't want the X or they can't get the X, they clearly are like, I want to be a part of this ecosystem somehow, some way. And the Series S, which is readily available, I walk into every electronics store and it's just sitting there. So it's not like that is supply constrained, because I've heard multiple reports of like you can make two S's for one X. So it's very easy to push those out, and I think that's kind of Xbox's secret weapon right now. It's kind of what's getting them in the door, because even if you do get a PS5, you Series S is a affordable next gen console that you're like, okay, I can afford to have this as a supplementary console then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I own the Series X and I have a Series S. I leave the X in
Mhm.
my living room. I have a 4K TV in there. And then I brought the S over to my girlfriend's apartment and I just leave that there. And that's kind of my secondary place to play. And so, I mean, taking a step back and removing yourself from the enthusiast market, how many players today already have a 4K TV that can do HDR 120, like they've spent thousands of dollars? I would
Not that
wager,
many.
yeah, the majority of people that are hopping on every night to play a couple of rounds of Warzone or playing some Fortnite or Forza, whatever you might have, these are
Mhm.
people that have a 1080p TV, might be a couple of years old. It still works fine. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, that kind of situation. And so if the Xbox Series S can run all of those games at a stable 60 and then push 120 for some games, you get that next gen boost without the next gen cost. And it looks good enough on the screen that you have. And then if you like it enough or you find, some money laying around, get a tax return or something, throw it towards a Series X upgrade. All of your games come with you, all of the saves come over. It's the perfect ecosystem for that. But
Mhm.
in the context of the Japanese market, I think that you make a good point of the games that are being brought over. My mind goes to a game like Scarlet Nexus, where it's appealing to a broad audience, but that was a big get for Game Pass. Really didn't scratch my itch personally, but it was a good game to include on the service. And so it's going to be interesting to see them continue to build it out. But let's say, hypothetically, these little bursts of sales successes in Japan continue, and we've already seen that this is going to probably be one of Xbox's best selling consoles behind the 360 in the
Mhm.
region, in their history of being in the gaming business. Where do you see, as of right now, Series X and S landing in terms of the Japanese market when it's hitting the end of its life?
Ooh, that's hard. I think that depends on if they keep this initiative going. If they keep getting Japanese focused games into Game Pass onto the console, then I think you're going to see it do really well. I can't give a number right off the top of my head. It would be great if they could hit a million in the lifespan of the jet, because that isn't so. What the Xbox One sold 100,000 lifetime
It
in.
was a pathetically low number, yeah.
Yeah, pathetic in Japan, and the Series X and S has already outsold it in the first year and a half on the market in Japan. So if they can hit a million, then I think that's like, okay, that's you're looking good. That's a good foundation for whatever the next console generation is. You have to keep up the Japanese focus. Make sure you're still investing in that. Don't do what you did with the Xbox One generation, where on the 360 we had games like Blue Dragon, Lost Odyssey, which were well received JRPG titles. But then the Xbox One comes out and they're like, that's done. We're not doing any more of that. We're not working with our Japanese partners anymore. And it was a very confusing time. And I don't understand why they went that route. Phil is kind of correcting it now. They've clearly identified that is a need, but it's still not something I can firmly say like, oh, they're going to be a massive success. I still think PlayStation overall is going to outsell them probably in Japan once the stock is fixed, once the supply issues are no more. But it could do well. It could do well compared to other Xbox consoles.
I think that's the biggest point is the perspective of it's going to do well in comparison to past consoles. I don't think it'll top the 360 just because looking at the graphs and looking at the trajectories, it's just not lining up from my novice point of view. But I think about Luke Lore, Insipid Ghost over on the Xbox expansion pass, who interviewed one of the original, founders of
Hmm.
Xbox that really built everything out, Ed Freeze, and he basically kind of laid out the line of how Xbox has just never really been successful in Japan for a plethora of reasons. There are cultural differences, just business isn't performed the same way, and it takes some learning to get that really nailed down and done right. But your point is valid in that Xbox is improving. And I think that's all we can really ask of them right now, because PlayStation as a global brand is a powerhouse in that specific region. And it's going to take a lot to overcome that for Xbox as a very American brand. I mean, it's an American technology company that, when you look back at the history of Xbox, it's the American games that stand out the most, and it's a very popular brand in the states and in other regions that share that similar culture. But when you look at Japan, it just doesn't line up in that same way yet. But it is nice to see them really pushing for some globalization, without a doubt. So, taking a step back and getting back into the games themselves that we saw during the showcase, for you personally, looking at the next
Mhm.
6 to 12 months of Xbox, what are the big landmark moments that stand out to you that you're looking forward to? It could be technology, it could be games, whatever it is. Let me know what gets you excited about Xbox right now.
So not a game, but I'm excited for the family plan to be unveiled. That is, we only have the report from Jez Corden, but I think when that comes out, it's gonna be a big deal. I game share with my brother right now. That's how we kind of share our Game Pass subscription. Set our each other's consoles as our home, but that's a big draw. I think that's gonna be great. Nintendo kind of has a family situation too. We can have like 8 people on it, and if you can have something similar like that for Xbox Game Pass, that would be huge in my opinion. In terms of, if we're focusing more on software and games, I think Starfield clearly is the big one for me. I'm really excited for Starfield. I think the technical issues need to be worked out from what we saw in the showcase. The frame rate and resolution needs to get sorted. But in terms of the actual gameplay style, it's everything I wanted in the game. Flying ships, I can't wait to customize mine. Give me a good narrative choice system. Let me explore the world for hundreds of hours. And I'm not really one that usually likes giant open worlds, but Bethesda games I love diving into. And I'm a huge Mass Effect fan, so I just want this to kind of be Bethesda's Mass Effect. I keep saying that, but besides Starfield, it wasn't at the showcase, but I think it's going to come the end of next year, and that's Hellblade 2. For
Mm.
me, Hellblade was one of the best games of last gen. It's probably in my personal top two of last gen. I know that's a hot take because a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's a walking simulator," but I personally love the story. I have a master's in psychology, so the way they handled, her psychosis and the schizophrenia and the voice, it was so well done. It was such a touching and phenomenal story. I can't wait to see where they go from that. And it just has to come at the end of next year for me. Like, they've had enough time. We've seen it twice now. It has to be nearing the end of development.
Yeah, I think, just to go off of that Hellblade statement, I fully expected Hellblade to be a holiday 2022 release. I did not think that that would be. I mean, obviously, it hasn't been pushed out, and it still could come out this year. But I fully expected there to be some kind of mention of it during the showcase, just because
Mm.
it has been shown off. It was unveiled at the Game Awards, then it was brought out during last year's showcase. I thought this would be, the third hit, and then you give us a release date of November 18th or whatever it might be. But yeah, Hellblade 2 looks phenomenal. The original Hellblade, I agree, is one of the best games from the last generation, just because of the way that it handled such a sensitive subject matter, and it handled it so well. So that's definitely one of my most anticipated as well. I'm looking forward to seeing how Microsoft expands in the PC space, and they really become a bigger player in that space, not only because obviously they have Windows, which is the way to play games on PC. It's one of the only really legitimate options when it comes to experiencing everything you've got. But when it comes to the Riot Games partnership, when it comes to expanding that third party library and giving more PC exclusives to subscribers on the platform, I think they're really working to improve the benefit and return on the investment of Game Pass for PC. And I think I said this on X Talk last week, where Microsoft really needs to take a step back and make PC Game Pass as necessary as Xbox Live was for the Xbox 360 or PlayStation Plus was for the PlayStation. You've got to want that as soon as you get into the world of PC gaming. And I think that they're making pretty significant strides to do that. But another one that I really want to see is Avowed. I mean, I've been waiting so long to see more of Avowed. I want to see more of these games that we've been talking about for a while. And I do think they're going to hit a cadence of every other year where you get some announcements here, the games come out a year or two later, and then you just kind of keep that kind of steady cadence going. But absolutely, I think that Hellblade's a big one for me. I think that PC gaming is a big one for me. I want to see some more Avowed. And then I think another one is just in general how cloud continues to improve. I tweeted out last night that I was just poking around on Twitch and I went to the Twitch benefits that you have with Prime. And I started playing a game with Luna. I started playing Luminous Remastered on Amazon Luna. And I was playing on my PC and obviously not a high performance, power hungry game like I'm playing Luminous, but it legitimately felt as good as me playing on console. It was the best cloud gaming experience I've had, even whenever you look at Xbox cloud gaming. Not by a lot because Xbox does it well, but I need it to be, like you were saying earlier, feeling native. I don't need any
Mhm.
latency. I want to be able to play. Perfect example. If I'm playing Halo on the cloud, I don't need to be able to tell that I'm playing Halo on the cloud when I look at my KD. Like, I need to be able to actually perform well without having to figure out, oh, how long do I actually need to delay before I shoot because my thumbsticks and my triggers aren't lining up with what's on the screen. Like,
Mhm.
the technology improvement in cloud is what I think is really going to be a big benefit if they can do it correctly. So I think that's what my four would be if I had to pick four.
Yeah, those are great choices. Avowed is certainly one that I'm looking forward to. Was sold right on the CGI cinematic they showed. I think a lot of people thought that would show up this year, and then we didn't get it because obviously it's like 12 months. So I don't think that game is the end of next year. I still think that's an early 2024 game, if I'm being honest. Like, that's just my feeling on it. And then Jason Schreier obviously dropped his whole thing like, oh, it's got rebooted or reworked a few times. So it's a little slow. I've heard conflicting reports on that. But I think we know improvements are coming to cloud with the ability to play your own games that you own. And I still think Xbox wants to be the leader in cloud gaming. Even in its infancy, they're showing that initiative where 1080p 60 for a lot of games is kind of the norm on cloud if you have a good connection. Now, my only other experience, I've never tried Luna, so I've heard good things about that, but my only other experience was with PlayStation Now, and that was I played all the Sly Cooper games through that PS3 streaming. There was notable latency. I have fantastic internet here. Cloud works great for me. It wasn't like, oh, this is ruining my experience. It was like, oh, I hit the X button and sometimes my jump was a little delayed and like I fell to my death. So there is still occasional issues where if we want cloud to be better, we need to invest in it, and Microsoft is the one taking that step.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, who better to invest in cloud gaming than one of the world's biggest technology companies that's, pumping out Surface equipment and you're pumping out Xboxes. I mean, you have the infrastructure and the production line to make it happen. Um, and these data centers have now been updated to Xbox Series X architecture.
Hmm.
So the only thing that's really limiting is time and development cost, I would assume. And the cost really shouldn't be that big of an issue. But as we wind down the show, are there any other big takeaways from the Summer Game Fest slash E3 slash not E3 season that you want to share with the viewers today?
Um, it needs to be more condensed. I don't enjoy having showcases spread out over weeks and weeks. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, E3 needs to die." I still think we need to try to like get everything within a 3 day period or like a short span, because the amount of like keeping up with random showcases like Focus Home did their Plague Tale one just this week. We had
Yeah.
Devolver Digitals, we have Future Game Showcase, PC Game Show. Like, it's too much for any one person to keep track of, let alone like a mass multitude of viewers trying to like schedule, okay, I want to watch this here because like I wonder what game's going to show up. Like, you're going to miss some announcements no matter what. I chose like, okay, I'm going to watch the big ones. I'm going to watch Xbox, PlayStation, State of Play, Summer Game Fest. I just don't really have time to watch, multiple hour long indie showcases, which is like sad because I love indie games, but there has to be a better format for it. And I just don't think that we've nailed it yet. And I've said the same thing the last 2 summers. It's getting better because I remember the first Summer Game Fest was like 3 months long, and I was like, this ain't it, Jeff. This ain't it.
Well, that was the I thinking back, that was the pandemic Summer Game Fest where that was
Hmm.
literally like E3 got canceled and Jeff Keighley put this together, and it was just random events over the course of June, July, and August, and I didn't even know what was going on at the end of that. Yeah, I think that looking back on E3s of the past, and I say this in the context of somebody whose life has changed. I used to watch E3 in high school. Then I went to college, got a little bit more constrained. You know, I'm working, I've got more things going on. Now, as a full grown ass man, like I don't have time at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday to sit
Hmm.
down and watch some random show. Like, I think that the E3s of old, looking back, I loved the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday evening kind of thing. And I'm Eastern
Yes.
time, but being able, I had no problem staying up until 10, 11, 12 in the morning watching these showcases because it was like an entire day long event. It was almost like a conference in and of itself in your living room where you just sat
Hmm.
down at 6 and you had Bethesda, then you had, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo all running through, and it was just a day long celebration and then a couple of other events throughout the week. Um, but yeah, I agree. I think that consolidation is key, and having I think this year was better because there were fewer smaller showcases.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah. So I think there is an improvement there, and that you don't have 20, 30-minute showcases that showcase nothing. You have 5 or 6 events that showcase at least something that you're probably going to be interested in. But I certainly think there's probably still room for some improvement without a doubt.
Yeah, and uh, I people just need to stop expecting every showcase to be like banger and like crazy premieres. Like, oh my god, I can't believe that game's coming in 2026. Like, not every showcase is gonna be like that. These are marketing events after all. Like, I know the fans like them, like, oh, they're for us, but like they're for marketing. They're to sell you products.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on the prediction shows, people that are saying, "Oh, I can't wait to see, Gears 6 and whatever else the coalition is working on." And then you have people
Hmm.
that are coming out, "I want to see the next big Halo expansion that's the size of the base game," and all of these big, like, these are great asks. I love the fact that there are these dreams and these hopes, but the reality is that that's just not the situation you're going to get, and I think people often set themselves up for disappointment with that.
Oh, they certainly set themselves up, and then they go on Twitter and they complain that certain things weren't there, and I'm just like, we need to stop looking at showcases through the lens of like you're going in expecting to be disappointed. Just like judge it based on like, oh, does that game appeal to me or not? And even then, don't go on Twitter and just argue with people like that showcase sucked because of this. Like other people probably enjoyed that. Like I didn't like the way Pentiment looked, but I've heard other people be like, "Oh, I really like the art style. I'm interested in that game." What was it? Ravenlock? Really appealed to me. I thought that game looked fantastic, and then other people are like, "I don't like the art style. That weird pixelated on the enemies didn't look very good." So we just need to let people like what they like. I keep the older I get, the more I'm just like, stop trying to bring other people down just because you didn't care for something. Other people can like it. That's completely fine.
Yeah, that's the biggest takeaway for me from the last 5 years of gaming is that so many people are out here trying to throw other games under the bus just because it doesn't necessarily appeal to them. And I mean, looking at something like the Playdate, the little Game Boy looking thing with a whole bunch
Hmm.
of black and white pixelated, am I going to buy that? Maybe someday. Am I buying it now? No, I have no interest in playing these games. But people like that. That's
Hmm.
cool. It's a neat idea. But, for them to talk shit about high quality Xbox games or high quality PlayStation games and compare those two, for example, is just ridiculous. Just everybody play their thing that they like. This is a fun hobby. I think that's the biggest point that I always try to drive home to people is just like you said, let people enjoy things.
Right there. It's fun, guys. Games are fun. Let's stop. Even when we're doing our live reacts, yes, we can be critical, but like we can make jokes. But at the end of the day, like it's fun. This whole thing it's just a fun time period. I look forward to this every year, like seeing what they're gonna show. I don't look forward to people being negative though. Like that's not a fun part of the experience. So like let's just more critical thought, less just blurting out negativity and just enjoy yourself. Like we're playing games on plastic boxes.
Absolutely. I think there's also a difference between people that take to the internet to go neck at each other and try and hate on something that somebody else is enjoying, like the PlayStation fanboys or the Xbox fanboys that go at each other after a specific event. That's one thing. I think taking to the internet and giving feedback, legitimate feedback on
Yes,
games that are shown, that's a totally different conversation. So I don't want
100%.
anybody listening to muddle those together because of a game.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, imagine what would have happened if the community had said at the initial Halo Infinite reveal, "Oh, that looks pretty good."
That looks great. Yeah, Craig, thumbs up.
Yeah, like they really took that Mega Bloks partnership to the next level because the entire game looked like a damn Mega Bloks kit. So like if there had never been any discussion around that or outrage online, then arguably the game might not have been delayed by a year, and we wouldn't have the decent shooter that we have today. Not perfect, but good. So yeah, I think the internet can bring some good, but also take it with a grain of salt because there is potentially some bad to come along with it, as most
Hmm.
things are.
For sure. For sure.
Absolutely. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today on the episode of Exhibition, digging into Summer Game Fest, looking back on it in retrospective, taking some time to talk about the cloud, looking to the future. Let the fine people once again know where they can find you in the fantastic Project Xtalk.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you once again for having me on, Sam. Loved our conversation, had a lot of fun. Hopefully, we'll have you back on soon. But you can find me at the Muffin Mon on Twitter. It's a one instead of an I and an O instead of an A. We are at Project Xtalk currently on Twitter. Go follow us over there before things change, and find all of our content at Project Xtalk on all audio platforms and Project Xtalk on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. We're pushing for 500 subscribers right now, so go over there, help us out.
Absolutely. And for those that are listening or watching this week's show, I appreciate you and thank you so much for taking the time to bake us in to your content routine. If you are new here and you enjoy the show, you like what you see or what you hear, be sure to hit that subscribe button here. Then go over to Project X Talk, drop a subscribe over there, add it to your podcast feed every week because there are always some great conversations to be had. But until next time, you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. I'll talk to you soon and keep on playing.